So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're very excited to get our club's first fireside chat underway here. The real estate club, led by Diana Kolath, Alec Hackman, and myself, Kevin Bierenbaum, are very excited to introduce our guest speaker in 2017 Holy Cross graduate, Cameron Lawson. Cameron currently is an economist at National Development in Newton, Lower Falls, Massachusetts. During his time on campus, he was an economics major, a member of the finance club, and an ice hockey player. Most notably, he's the founder of the real estate club, so we have him to thank for that. Cam, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I can get us going here with the first question. The first one just kind of has to do with your career path. So what motivated you to pursue a career in real estate? And can you tell us a little bit about your career journey since graduating from Holy Cross in 2017?
So I came to Holy Cross in 2013 from Western Canada, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I studied economics, and junior year, a few of my friends were pursuing investment banking internships in New York City. I was always interested in business, and I thought that I might go to New York and see what I could learn about business while I was there. Thought maybe I was interested in investment banking. Being an athlete, I'm competitive. I wanted to go into a field that was also competitive. And so I went to New York junior year. And when I was there, I had a great experience. I did like an accounting internship. And what I learned while I was there was that I was more interested in my commute to work than the actual work that I was doing when I got to the office. I lived all the way downtown. I commuted all the way uptown on the train, and I found myself just looking at the buildings and interested in the built environment in New York City. So that's when I realized that if I was interested in real estate outside of work, it might be something that I should pursue doing for the job. So I came back senior year, and I was looking for opportunities to learn more about real estate. I connected with the pre-business program to see if we could start a real estate club. And at the same time, I just networked and talked to a lot of people I knew in the industry and was able to find an internship in Worcester my senior year with kind of a crazy entrepreneurial project to try and build a public market in Worcester. So boots on the ground experience. And I was able to parlay that experience into a great job at National Development. And this is my 7th year. So it's been quite a fun trajectory. And it kind of all came from not really knowing what I wanted to do, and taking a chance going to New York, figuring out what might be interesting, and just kind of going all in on that.
Yeah, it's definitely good for kids like us coming from a liberal arts school to hear that someone, came into the school without knowing what they want to do, which I think a lot of us are in the same boat. And figuring out the way that you made your way into real estate. It's helpful. Diane or Alec, you guys can go ahead with your next question.
Yeah, I'll go. My next question is kind of want to ask, what exactly do you do at National Development as an economist?
So I work on the investment team. I started out as an analyst, spent a lot of time in Excel models, worked a lot of hours the first few years. Maybe after the first 3 or 4 years, moved over to the investment team. Today, what I do is I work on new acquisitions. So I spend my time trying to find opportunities for us to buy existing property or build new development projects. I talk to a lot of brokers. I do a lot of underwriting. Once I find an opportunity that I think is interesting for us, I'll bring it to investment committee, pitch the deal to our investment committee, put together our investment materials and memoranda, and then work with the development team or the due diligence team through actually effectuating the transaction. So I spend my time trying to buy real estate or build real estate, and we invest on behalf of our institutional investment partners, primarily large endowments.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, something that I wanted to know was how your liberal arts education helps you in your day-to-day life and your career.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, um, no matter what role you're in, whether it's in real estate or else, communication is really important and getting your ideas across and being able to sell your ideas in a way that's, not salesy in the sense of the word, but that you can communicate your ideas across effectively. And that's something that I learned at Holy Cross. And that's something that the liberal arts teaches really well, is how to take an idea and communicate it, whether it's numbers, whether it's in presentation form, whether it's an investment memo, or whether it's just sitting at the table with your boss explaining why you think it's a good idea to invest in a certain neighborhood or a certain project. The opportunities that Holy Cross presented me were really kind of foundational for what I do today. Not necessarily because, the economics major is what I use day in, day out, but the skills that I learned doing those papers and communicating my ideas and presentations at Holy Cross are really, really important. Of
Yeah, that's really neat. Thank you.
course.
I have one follow-up question, which I think will be really helpful for our members within the real estate club is what is acquisitions? And I guess if you could go into depth about what the acquisitions team does at National Development.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Real estate's kind of there are a lot of vague terms in real estate that until you get in the industry, once you're in the industry, you understand the jargon, but until you get in there, understanding what does acquisitions actually do? What does development actually do? What do brokers do? Who do they represent? It's pretty tough. So the acquisitions business is, in a sense, buying buildings or buying land to build buildings on. So that could start from an idea that you have and say, I want to go and I want to buy an apartment building. How do you buy an apartment building? Well, you can call owners directly. You can call brokers who sell apartment buildings. Or you can, pick up the phone book and try and find a willing seller. Typically what happens is that there's a broker who represents a seller. Seller decides they want to sell. An acquisitions person has a relationship with a broker, and you either connect with the broker or they connect with you and say, hey, are you interested in this opportunity? If it seems something that's interesting, they'll send you offering materials, which will include rent roll. It'll include all the historic operating statements, revenues, expenses for the property. You can then do your math, do your Excel, figure out whether it's a compelling opportunity or not. And then in the acquisitions role, you go and, present to investment committee and make sure that everyone's on board with your numbers, everyone's on board with the opportunity profile wise. And then once you get sign off there, move through the process of actually buying a building. So, you go do property tours, you go tour the competitive set, you work on a purchase and sale agreement and work with the lawyers to actually move through the title process and transfer the ownership of that property to us. And in exchange, we give them some cash. So that's, I guess, a very simplistic way of explaining what an acquisitions person does from kind of the idea generation to the actual manufacturing of an investment opportunity.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
The next question we have for you is kind of for people trying to get into the industry. So what roles or teams do you think are currently growing in real estate, and like kind of like where do you think a good place to start for someone trying to break into the industry is right now?
Real estate's kind of a tricky business because rarely are people ever hiring in the traditional sense of the word. There's not a lot of kind of rotational training programs. There's not a lot of entry level jobs. The best way to get in is to network and to talk to a lot of people and talk to one person, then ask for 5 more people to talk to. And, a good place to start, a lot of the brokerage shops, they're quite large and they have a kind of wide array of opportunities there, whether it's sales, whether it's leasing, whether it's on the project management team, whether it's in an analytical role, whether it's in research, they have a pretty wide array of opportunities. So if you can talk to a lot of people at brokerage shops, it's a pretty good place to start. Another place that I think is underrated is at the banks in real estate lending. Someone who does real estate lending usually a loan is, let's say, 60 to 70% of the capitalization of an acquisition or a development project. So if you're an analyst on the real estate lending team, you're doing essentially the same analysis as I would be on the acquisitions or on the principal investing side. Just, you're 60% of the deal and I'm 40% of the deal. So the math is very similar, the analysis is very similar, the training is very similar. It's I think an underrated place to learn the skills if you're interested in real estate investing. There's so many different places to learn real estate, whether it's in a development role, whether it's at a brokerage shop, whether it's at a bank, whether it's on the principal investing side, whether it's in property management, asset management, legal, real estate lawyers. If you can talk to as many people as you possibly can, you'll learn something from each one of them and then get them to put you in touch with someone else. And slowly you'll start to gain an understanding of how the industry works and what the different players do.
Thank you for that.
Another question I wanted to ask was how does, someone who's just starting to network go about that process? And what have you, during your time, what was the most effective subject header you used to get responses?
Well, I'll start with your first question. Warm connections are the best. Holy Cross has such an incredible network. Anyone that you reach out to from Holy Cross, if you have your subject header, Holy Cross student reaching out, whatever it is, 90+% of the time they're going to get back to you. So I'd start with warm connections. I would then use those connections to get more warm connections, whether you have a network through Holy Cross, whether it's through your high school, whether it's through a sports team or a sport that you're interested. Leveraging your networks and your warm connections is the best place. And then using those connections to build more networks and more connections, you can really kind of spider web your network out into something that's, much larger.
Thank you.
Of course. Networking is very important.
Diana,
Getting into a job and then also once you're in the job as well.
Yeah, some of us are seniors and we're going out into the real world in a couple months, and then we also have freshmen that are going to be graduating college in a couple years. And so any lessons that we can learn sooner, the better. So my question is, if you were a senior right now in October 2024 and could do something differently, what would you do?
Than what I did.
What was that?
Do something differently than what I did when I was a senior, or do something differently as in a way to differentiate yourself?
Kind of both. Like, I don't know how much things have changed since you were a senior, but like if you were to be put into one of our shoes right now,
Yeah.
and could maybe make a decision that would have saved you a couple mistakes down the line or just got you to be to a point of success quicker. Is there anything that you could talk about on that?
Yeah, so I think what I did as a senior in really just diving all in and getting an internship and taking part in the real estate club and, networking and networking and networking, it is different than what most people do. If you have an internship senior year on top of your classwork, and you're, going to real estate club meetings, when you then network with someone at, one of the brokerage shops, you can say, here's what I'm doing, and here's how I really show that I'm interested in getting a job, in a way that differentiates you from, everyone else who's calling and asking for a job as well. So I don't think I would do anything differently myself. I think the fact that I, went out and found an internship senior year and really got involved in the real estate community in earnest, is just, there aren't that many people that are actually doing that. So if you are one of the people doing those types of things, you really stand out. Another thing that I would recommend, if you're interested in the investing side of real estate, build yourself a model and learn how to model. And then what you can do when you network with people is you can send it to them and say, you know, here's something that I've been working on, and show that you're just really interested and eager to get a job. And that eagerness and that interest, I think, and that differentiation goes such a long way when you're networking with people.
How do you get into making these models? Do you have like a mentor? Do you sign up for a program?
Yeah, that's a good question too. There's so many resources online. I signed up for a few different online courses. It was like learn how to build a real estate acquisitions model, and I would go sit at the Worcester Public Library and go, because I didn't have a PC, I only had a Mac. So, and you can't really do Excel on a Mac very well. So I'd go sit at the Worcester Public Library and go module through module of Excel 101 and then Excel 201 and then financial statement analysis and then real estate modeling and then advanced real estate modeling. And eventually, first of all, you learn Excel, which is really important in real estate if you're on the acquisitions or on the investment team. And the second of all, you get a base understanding of how to build these models. And as an analyst, that's going to be a very, very large portion of your job. So if you can show an employer day one that you already know how to do those types of things and you already have some of those technical skills, it really goes a long way.
Appreciate you taking the time to answer those questions, Cam. I think we're gonna move on to the general members questions. They have some in the chat, so I can read the first one off. It's from Adam. He says, "Hi Cam, thanks for joining us. Quick question I have about the development business. When do you sell an asset after it's developed, and what factors influence that decision?"
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on your objectives as an investor or a developer. I work at a private equity fund. It's closed end. So we have a lifespan on our investment. You have 4 or 5 years to invest the money. You then have another 10 to harvest the investment. So if we get to let's say we, build a project in year 1, and if we get to year 15, eventually we need to sell. We don't have a choice. Often, what happens in our business, because we're return driven, we're IRR driven. Once we build a building or build a project, we're trying to sell right away, because typically the quicker you can sell, the better your return is when you're adjusted for time value of money. So it really depends on what your objectives are. If you're a long-term holder, if you're a high net worth person and you have $1 billion in the bank and you want to build a skyscraper and hold it for the rest of your life and pass it down to your kids, then your objectives are totally different and you might never sell. In our business, we have to sell and we're return driven. So we typically will build a building, we'll lease it up, we'll stabilize it, and then we'll sell it. And that process usually takes, let's say, 2 years to build, a year to lease up, a year to stabilize, maybe it's 4 years, and then you're in and out.
Thanks, Cam. The next question we have is from Will. He asks, "What is National Development's competitive advantage regarding value-add developments and acquisitions?"
That's another good question. So National Development is geographically focused, but asset type agnostic. So what that means is that we only invest in the Northeast, primarily the greater Boston region, but we invest in everything from life science lab to industrial to hotels to multifamily ground up development. So our competitive advantage is that we know this market, and when the markets change, we can change quickly. So for example, when life science was really hot a couple of years ago and there was lots of startups building new space in Cambridge, we were able to quickly jump into the life science space and build some really incredible buildings in Boston, including the Eli Lilly building on the Fort Point Channel, which some of you may know about. And then when investing in life science slowed down over the last couple of years, we can quickly pivot into, whether it's industrial space, whether it's multifamily, whether it's senior housing. We know the markets and we focus on one geography. So our competitive advantage is that.
All right, we got one more question here from the members. Christian asked, when you were looking for new acquisitions, especially deals that require rehab, do you have any tips or tricks to beating competitors for these quick deals?
Relationships are really important. Networking is really important. I can tell you that we're in due diligence on 4 deals right now. 2 of them are from a relationship, a partner relationship. One of them is from a broker relationship, and another one is a broker that reached out to us because our reputation. So a lot of the business of real estate, especially in Boston, with us being a local player, is relationship driven. If you have great relationships with the brokers, if you have great relationships with landowners, if you treat people really well and do what you say you're going to do, typically you get those calls and you're the first one that people want to do business with. So I think that's another, competitive advantage that we have in national development, and it kind of all stems from being a local group and being focused on these markets.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And personally, whenever I'm talking to alumni in real estate, they always, and I ask the question about connecting their liberal arts education to real estate, they always talk about how real estate's such a person-driven industry, and a liberal arts education gives you, great, as you said, communication skills. So I think that plays a big role there too.
Yep. No kidding. That's for sure.
I think that's all we have, unless do you two have anything else you wanted to ask or add?
Yeah, I actually did want to ask. I don't know if you'd be able to quantify this, but if you were to place a certain amount of weight on stats and networking out of 100%, how much weight would you put on networking?
Good.
Would you
Like
say
in my job or in getting a job?
Either or.
Yeah. So in my job, it's probably 50-50. Maybe that's a cop-out answer, but I think that you might not get the opportunity to do a deal if you don't have the network and you don't have the relationships, because you might not get the call. If you get the call and you don't have the capabilities to do the technical analysis to figure out if it's a good investment or not, you'll never get it to the point where you can picture that investment committee. So I think there's a pretty even split between those two things. As a young person, I would focus on the latter. I'd focus on the technicals, because if you're in the business and you're a reasonable person, you'll build those relationships. It's an easier skill to market if you have the ability to do Excel. If you have the senior people at the company are going to have more relationships, and have a better network than you day one, of course, but they might not have the ability to do some of the technical work that you could learn very quickly as a young person, the way that a young person could. So in my job, it's probably 50-50. In getting a role in real estate, I would say it's probably maybe 60-40 to the technicals, but you can't understate how important networking is. That's the way that you're going to find. It's actually very similar. Networking is the way you're going to find the opportunity. Having the skill set is how you're going to actually get the job offer.
Thank you.
First.
All right, well, Alec, if do you have anything else to add or?
I'm good. I'm all set with my questions.
All right. Oh, I think we just got one more pop up in the Q&As. We did. All right. Question is, how is AI changing the real estate market, or is it changing the way you do business?
So technology's changed real estate in my business a lot since I started. And I think that we're just seeing the beginnings of how AI is going to transform. I mean, the way that we can evaluate land or buildings today, whether it's CoStar online, whether it's Google Maps, whether it's dropping the little person down on Google Maps in an area that you're not familiar with. It's just totally transformed how someone like me can do their job. Frankly, sometimes I can get a better sense of a development opportunity from Google Maps than I can from actually going there and driving there and looking at it in person. So it really has made a huge difference. And I think we're just scratching the surface on AI. At this at this time. It's mostly used for, I would say, proofreading investment memos. I don't think that we have any technologies that are using AI to actually source opportunities. We do have groups reaching out to us to try and show us technology platforms that use AI to underwrite opportunities, which could be interesting. And I think there's only gonna be more and more use of AI in real estate going forward. So technology is definitely transforming the industry in a way that I think just makes everyone more productive, and it allows us to hopefully do more projects and do things more efficiently.
We actually had one more come in and then we'll cap it after this. The last question, how are higher interest rates impacting your business in 2024? And what is the level of deal activity currently in development, specifically seeing that supply is low?
Yeah, it's another great question. So, real estate's driven by interest rates. There's a macro and there's a micro component to real estate, and the macro component is very significant. When rates were really, really low through COVID, the transaction volume was, record highs. The development volume was in record highs. There's usually a couple year lag from when projects get capitalized to when they actually get built. So there were projects that were capitalized or that, were created in 2021 that came out of the ground and started actually getting built in 22, 23. Then when interest rates went up and up and up through 2023, development pipeline shut down, slowed down a lot. So today there aren't nearly as many projects coming out of the ground. Transaction volume, development volume is way down from the last couple of years. And once we know where interest rates are going to stabilize, it's obviously very significant to cap rates and real estate valuations. Then you can recalibrate your math, you can figure out how much things are worth, and you can start doing projects again. But transaction volume's been pretty slow over the last couple of years. It's picked up a little bit over the last maybe 6 months, which is great. And then once we start to see some stabilization and the bond market figure out where it wants to land, I think things pick back up.
Awesome. Well, Cam, I think we're gonna wrap it up here now, but we all really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to jump on with us. Super insightful and informative, so we appreciate it.
Happy to do it, guys. Great job putting this all together. It's a great thing, and keep taking part in the real estate club, keep networking, and that's utilize the Holy Cross network as much as you possibly can, because it's in Boston and in New York and all across the East Coast. It's really a powerful thing.
All right. Well, thank you, Cam, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Have a good
Thanks for
one.
having me.
Thank you.